Welcome to the video on simplifying expressions with complex numbers. Remember that a complex number is a number that has a real part and an imaginary part. And basically, the only rules you need to remember is that complex numbers involve like terms. So for example, if I were to add I plus 6i, we treat those as like terms and we add them together to get 7i. Or, for example, if I was adding 3 and 4 and 6i, 3 and 4 are like terms, so I get 7. But you can't add it to the 6i because they're not like terms, and that's your final answer. Using these two principles and what you know of algebra, take a moment to simplify the following expressions. Be careful in number 7 because you need to remember that this negative symbol is a -1, which will distribute to both of the terms inside of parentheses. Pause the video here, and when you're ready to see the answers, press play again. Here are your answers. If you need more time to check your work, go ahead and press pause. Otherwise, we'll move on and talk a little bit about multiplying with imaginary numbers. Just like with adding terms, multiplying, you follow all the same algebra rules, except there is going to be one extra step. So for example, if I wanted to distribute 4i into this expression, which is -2 minus 8i, my first step would just be to multiply both terms. So 4i times -2 is -8i, and 4i times -8i is -32i squared. However, the last step is that when you see I squared in an expression, you never want to leave that because I squared is the same thing as -1. When you see I, you leave it like it is. But I squared, you're going to get rid of it completely, and in its place, you're going to substitute a -1, which means that this expression can still be simplified, and it actually equals -8i plus 32, and that plus came from multiplying the negative and the negative. Now, this can't be simplified anymore. Don't substitute anything for I. I stays like it is. This is your final answer. Using this principle, and in case you can't tell, these are all multiplication symbols right here in these problems. Take a moment to solve the remaining 3 problems, 10, 11, and 12. And then I'll come back and talk about 13 and 14. Here are the answers for 10, 11, and 12. And you may have already started to look at 13 if you had time before. The only difference in this expression is that we have 2 binomials, 2 sets of parentheses, which means to simplify this I will need to FOIL. Other than that, we're going to follow all the same principles. For example, -2 times 4 is -8, -2 times I is -2i, I times 4 is -4i, and -I times I is -I squared. I'll go ahead and combine my like terms, which are these middle terms. Remember that combining is different than multiplying, so it doesn't become I squared, it just becomes -6i. However, I do have the I squared at the back, and that one I need to change because that one becomes the -1. It's really important to use parentheses in these cases because the parentheses help you see that we have two negatives, and that this is actually going to turn into a plus 1, which is like terms with the negative 8. So negative 8 minus 6i plus 1 becomes negative 7 minus 6i. And that's your final answer. Can't be simplified anymore. Using that principle, go ahead and simplify 14, 15, and 16. One thing to note about 15 is that this is a multiplication symbol, so this one's not going to be FOIL. This one, which is a little different, you're just going to distribute, and then once you've done that, distribute the 7i as well. Take a minute to work these out, and when you're ready, I'll show you the answers. Here you go.